y también de la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial. En el marco del Día Universal del Niño, proclamado por las Naciones Unidas, estamos realizando esta actividad en conjunto llamada Seguridad Vial Infantil, un compromiso a largo plazo. Agradecemos especialmente el apoyo de la institución de la Organización Panamericana de Salud de Argentina, la presencia de la Agencia Argentina, Pablo Martín Cariñano, quien ya está presente en esta actividad, y también del responsable del Centro de Formación de la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial, Sebastián Kellman, quien también ya está presente. A nivel internacional, vamos a contar con la presencia del destacado profesor de la Facultad de Técnica de Delft, el profesor Fred Wetman, uno de los referentes mundiales de la seguridad vial, quien en minutos nos estará haciendo una magistral presentación sobre las últimas tendencias y formas de abordar la seguridad vial. Para la Fundación, como organización no gubernamental internacional, es un honor poder estar trabajando y colaborando en todo lo que tiene que ver a la seguridad vial infantil en Argentina y con este trabajo de todas las provincias. Extenderme más, le voy a dar la palabra al director Pablo Martínez Cariñano de la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial, quien va a presentar la actividad que vamos a estar desarrollando. Pablo.
Buenos días, ¿cómo están? Muchísimas gracias. Muy agradecido por la convocatoria, por poder estar con ustedes y presentar este tema, que ya desde el título nos marca la pauta de cómo abordar la situación. Efectivamente, tenemos que pensar en el largo plazo. Cuando uno recorre el país, yo intento hacerlo cada vez que puedo, salir de esta burbuja que es la ciudad de Buenos Aires y recorrerlo, uno se encuentra que situaciones que uno podría pensar que ya no existen o que en las grandes ciudades quizás no se producen, en cada uno de los pueblos de nuestro país se repiten a diario con consecuencias muy graves y con afectados muy débiles, muy vulnerables, como son los niños. Recorrí Salta, Jujuy, Tucumán en los últimos días y les digo que postales como familias enteras arriba de una moto, como bebés en el asiento delantero, como niños sueltos en la caja de una camioneta, o como chicos caminando al costado de la ruta, incluso de noche, son escenas que se repiten cotidianamente. No existe la menor noción, o pareciera no existir la menor noción del peligro por parte de los adultos en ese caso, como tampoco existe una cultura vial por parte de los que tienen que tomar las decisiones, intentando mitigar ese problema. Entonces, claro, uno podría hacerla fácil, podría decir, esto no se va a solucionar nunca. ¿Qué podemos hacer? Esto es así, esto es idiosincrático, esto es algo que nos excede, y eventualmente dar alguna charla presencial o virtual, mandar un par de folletos y sentirse conforme con uno mismo. En realidad eso no sirve. Lo que sí sirve es este trabajo, creo, espero que sirva, estoy convencido de que es el camino. Es un trabajo largo, es un trabajo sostenido, y es un trabajo en el que las autoridades locales, los decisores locales, la gente de las provincias, la gente de los pueblos y de las ciudades, sea parte. Es imposible pensar en una solución a este problema, ni siquiera en sus primeros pasos, si no viene acompañada del trabajo diario de la gente de las provincias. Por eso estoy muy agradecido a todos los que gentilmente, con mucha vocación, se han brindado para sumarse a estas capacitaciones. junto con la Fundación Gonzalo Rodríguez, con la que estamos trabajando desde el comienzo, muy bien, y quiero de nuevo agradecer, porque puede ser antipático, pero en este mar de oportunismos, encontrar una entidad que tenga muy en claro que no se puede ir del punto A al punto B en un segundo, sino que en el medio hay trabajo, evaluación, corrección, más trabajo, para nosotros es muy importante. Agradezco a Sebastián Kellman, que está a cargo de esto por parte de la agencia, y de nuevo, les agradezco muchísimo a todos ustedes por tomarse el tiempo, por ponerle ganas, por confiar en que podemos vivir en un país con más seguridad vial para nuestros chicos, para nuestras chicas, y que depende de todos nosotros, un poquito, cada día, llevar la idea a la acción, convencer, hinchar, militar para que esto sea algo de todos los días y en todas las ciudades del país. Dicho esto, sin robarles más tiempo, les mando un abrazo enorme y sepan que la agencia está a total disposición para que cualquiera de ustedes lo que necesiten, estamos para ayudar. Gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Pablo. La verdad que da placer como ONG poder estar trabajando de forma articulada con un gobierno que mira a la misma dirección y de la misma forma que lo hacemos nosotros. El tiempo, siempre digo que el tiempo que nosotros le dedicamos al trabajo es el mismo, ya sea en una provincia o en otra, en un país o en otro, como somos una organización internacional, estar haciendo esto en cualquier otro lado, pero siempre primamos, tienen la garra, que tienen la voluntad, que tienen las ganas para que estos procesos después se reflejen en resultados, y es por eso que estamos dedicando tanto tiempo, pasión, conocimiento a ustedes acá en Argentina, porque la verdad que para nosotros es un honor poder trabajar con todos ustedes, y siendo con las características que tiene el país, porque si fuese un país que no fuese provincial sería mucho más fácil, pero la verdad que tienen un gran desafío, y el estar trabajando con todas las provincias a la vez, para mí es algo destacable, que lo estamos compartiendo en otros países de la región para que vean cómo en Argentina hay cosas que son de común interés, más allá de los intereses políticos o de las circunstancias o de la pandemia o de lo que sea. Este tema no está siendo dejado de lado. Así que nada, un placer estar trabajando contigo de forma articulada, y apenas la pandemia nos permita poder viajar, estaremos sentados ahí en el escritorio junto con todo tu equipo. Bueno, le doy el paso a las palabras de Sebastián Kellman, quien está al frente de esta batalla, trabajando mano a mano técnicamente con las provincias y con el equipo técnico de la Fundación. Así que bueno, Sebastián, te doy acceso. Vamos a ver un video antes, me están soplando por ahí atrás. Vamos a ver un video y después venís tú, Sebastián.
Puede ser que no se escuche, el video no se está escuchando, puede ser. Lo vamos a pasar de nuevo entonces.
Si logran arreglarlo.
Se los escucha a ustedes, no se escucha el video. El audio del video no sale.
Para pasar nuevamente el video con el audio.
convicción de que los adultos somos los responsables de garantizar los derechos de los niños y niñas argentinos, y gracias a un trabajo articulado entre la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial y la Fundación Gonzalo Rodríguez, se comenzó un proyecto que tiene por objetivo promover entre los gobiernos provinciales la inclusión de la seguridad vial infantil en la política pública, garantizando de esta manera el derecho de los niños del país a una movilidad segura y saludable. Gracias al apoyo de los referentes provinciales, se logró convocar a 23 provincias y al gobierno de la ciudad de Buenos Aires, comenzando un proceso de cambio en la forma de abordaje de la movilidad infantil. Fueron 33 representantes de equipos técnicos provinciales los que durante 6 meses de ininterrumpida formación dedicaron más de 100 horas para lograr avanzar en conocimientos sobre la movilidad segura de los niños y terminar esta fase con una capacitación en gestión y planificación que les permitió comenzar a establecer sus planes de seguridad vial infantil provinciales. Comprometidos y orgullosos de haber establecido una red de trabajo de seguridad vial infantil a nivel nacional, hoy podemos decir que el 40% de las provincias han avanzado en sus planes de seguridad vial infantil. Que los niños lleguen a ser grandes es responsabilidad de todos.
No sé si tengo que comenzar yo. No se escucha. Bueno, arranco yo. Bueno, muchas gracias. ¿Se me escucha bien? Bien. Bueno, hoy en el Día Internacional de los Derechos del Niño, lo que estamos haciendo acá, más de 220 personas de todo el país, es seguir poniendo en agenda la problemática de la movilidad, de la seguridad vial de los niños, de los infantes, en un proceso que venimos desde comienzo de año trabajando y que obviamente es el comienzo para continuar en el próximo año y en una política pública que nos lleve de manera sostenida con el tiempo a empezar a revertir estas cuestiones. Estar hoy acá, tener presencia en los medios, abrir el debate, contar con especialistas, contar con gente de todo el país, no hace otra cosa que poner sobre la mesa un tema importante para que sea abordado en todos los espacios. Yo les voy a contar un poquito cómo vinimos trabajando, cómo fue todo este proceso y cómo va a continuar, para después sí dar paso a la charla tan interesante, para seguir formándonos, para seguir entendiendo, para seguir conociendo programas, proyectos y acciones que mejoraron la movilidad de los niños, para copiarlo mejor y para hacer un trabajo sostenido y serio. En los primeros días de la gestión nos propusimos tomar de manera profesional, sostenida y federal la seguridad vial infantil. El observatorio de la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial nos decía que en el 2018 el 6,5% de la población fallecida en siniestros de tránsito tenía entre 0 y 14 años. Nos pasaban distintas estadísticas, distintos relevamientos, en donde se veía que de 0 a 4 años los siniestros, los hechos viales donde fallecían los niños, tenían una preponderancia en el vehículo, en el auto y como peatón. Y a partir de los 5, entre los 5 y los 14 años, se sumaba la bicicleta. Si bien apuntamos desde la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial a un programa de formación, de educación en el sistema educativo formal, en la escuela, y estamos desde comienzo de la gestión también junto al Ministerio de Educación Nacional y distintos ministerios las provincias avanzando y vamos a seguir como primer objetivo pidiendo y trabajando para que se dé educación vial en las escuelas de la República Argentina, y siempre enfocamos que es la principal causa de muerte entre jóvenes, hasta 25 años o hasta 29 años, y trabajamos fuertemente por ello. Hoy nos enfocamos en la primera edad, en los infantes, de 0 a 14 años. En primer lugar, fuimos a buscar, o mejor dicho, nos buscamos mutuamente a la Fundación Gonzalo Rodríguez, quienes tenían la expertise en la temática, una temática no trabajado profundamente, yo diría en ninguna parte del país, una fundación que bueno, nos acercó y nos brindó todos los recursos para poder avanzar. Enseguida pusimos en marcha un integral para la movilidad segura infantil que involucrara a las provincias. Para nosotros era fundamental la cuestión de poder trabajar junto con las provincias, de trabajar con ellos y no ir desde la Agencia Nacional a dar una charla de SRI o a hacer un abordaje puntual, sino en manera conjunta involucrarlos, hacerlos sentir parte de este proceso de mejora en la seguridad de los niños. Hablamos con los 24 representantes, les contamos cuál era nuestro proyecto, le hablamos de la importancia de tener un plan federal de seguridad vial infantil y tuvimos una respuesta excelente y muy comprometida de los 24 representantes de seguridad vial en las provincias. Enseguida ellos se comprometieron en abordar la temática a largo plazo, dándonos equipos, poniéndonos personas de sus equipos, y ahí conformamos un equipo de trabajo de 35 personas de todo el país, que son los encargados de trabajar la seguridad vial en cada una de las provincias. Al momento de arrancar, obviamente habíamos planificado un proceso presencial de formación para luego ir a trabajar ya en el territorio. Obviamente que a los pocos días de arrancar empezó la cuestión de la pandemia, que obviamente nos hizo recalcular y replanificar todo el proceso, y el 2 de junio ya pudimos arrancar en un proceso de formación, que es lo que venimos haciendo inclusive hasta el día de hoy y hoy mismo, que es seguir aprendiendo, seguir formándonos en algo tan específico como la movilidad segura de los niños. Y así fue que el 2 de junio arrancamos un proceso de virtual que duró 3 semanas. Luego, en la segunda etapa, mientras continuábamos con el proceso de formación, con más de 15 webinars que tuvo el equipo de trabajo. Esto lo destaco porque hoy ya, en fines de noviembre, donde todos trabajamos mucho con la virtualidad y a través de la computadora, sabemos lo cansador que es. Y bueno, tuvimos 15 webinars con distintos especialistas que nos fueron aportando distintas aristas, distintas partes para poder hacer un trabajo integral. Comenzamos con todo lo que tiene que ver con el relevamiento de información para la toma de decisión. Estuvo el director del Observatorio de la Agencia Nacional, Pablo Rojas. Después vimos experiencias exitosas en el marco de la movilidad con COVID. Después, seguridad vial del niño pasajero, la experiencia en Estados Unidos. Después, movilidad segura de los niños en motocicleta. Continuamos, normativa y técnica. Tuvimos un webinar muy interesante de educación vial centrada en los niños, transporte escolar, prevención de lesiones, tecnología y control. Y así tuvimos 15 webinars donde el personal se fue formando. Comenzamos a realizar el trabajo de campo a partir de ahí, ya pensando en la apuesta para llevar adelante en las provincias y en las ciudades, pensando en las características y en las particularidades de cada provincia. Sabemos que no es lo mismo una provincia que otra, ni siquiera o mucho menos es fundamental. Comenzamos a armar un plan de seguridad vial infantil, investigando la problemática local, identificando mapa de actores. apuntándole a la planificación estratégica para mejor seguridad vial infantil. Con lo cual, todo un año muy particular, estamos en condiciones de pensar o de creer y de apostar de que en 2021 vamos a poder avanzar con la implementación de este plan de seguridad vial infantil en gran cantidad de las provincias de Argentina y obviamente en gran cantidad de las ciudades de la Argentina. Podemos creer que vamos a armar una agenda donde tenga la seguridad vial incluida, una agenda de trabajo en seguridad vial donde la seguridad vial infantil esté incluida, donde entre la Fundación Gonzalo Rodríguez, distintos técnicos y especialistas que se están y se van a seguir sumando en seguridad vial infantil, los equipos de cada una de las provincias, el equipo que me acompaña en la Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial y referentes de las distintas ciudades, vamos a poder trabajar el año que viene en seguridad vial infantil, en todo lo que tiene que ver con escolares seguros, en los traslados en el transporte público, en el traslado en el transporte de pasajeros, en la legislación local. Entendemos que la seguridad vial infantil tiene mucho, es muy profunda, tiene que ver con la educación. Hablamos de los infantes son los futuros adolescentes, los adolescentes son los futuros conductores, y desde ahí es que tenemos que trabajar, apuntando un rol de ciudadanía, generando mejores conductores y mejores personas que circulen por la vía pública, como peatón, como ciudadanos, que contemplen al otro, que respeten al otro, que respeten al peatón, que respeten al ciclista, que respeten a la persona de tercera edad, con lo cual el año que viene nos va a encontrar trabajando en ese sentido. Quiero, agradecer por último a la Fundación por su flexibilidad, todo lo que le fuimos pidiendo, las necesidades que fuimos detectando, cuestiones particulares del año que tuvimos, las aperturas que fuimos teniendo y lo que creemos que va a ser el arranque del año que viene. Logramos una gran flexibilidad y un acompañamiento total, especialmente a los 24 referentes que siguen a disposición, colaborando y sumando recursos para que el año que viene podamos hacer un gran trabajo, a las 35 personas que participaron de esta primera etapa del programa y que van a seguir fuertemente el año que viene. Creemos mucho en ustedes, van a ser fundamentales, todas las ganas, todo el empuje, todas las puertas que puedan golpear y puedan abrir para abordar esta temática va a ser fundamental. Y bueno, un mensaje final también para los ejecutivos de las municipalidades, que vamos a ir el año que viene a pedir que tomen estas temáticas y que se comprometan. Vamos a necesitar de esos actores para seguir avanzando en todo lo que tiene que ver con la movilidad segura infantil. Muchas gracias y como dijo Pablo Cariñano, a disposición el Centro de Formación y la Agencia Nacional para cualquier cuestión que podamos colaborar, sumar para robustecer este Plan Integral Federal de Seguridad Vial Infantil. Gracias.
La verdad que indudablemente esta es la forma de hacer las cosas, observando, identificando, planificando, trabajando con orden y como decías tú recién, no a lo loco hacer cosas atropelladas, porque acá estamos hablando de la vida de los niños y esto tiene que ser algo articulado, pensado, y quien esté al frente el conocimiento del por qué es tan importante, no sé, desde reducir la velocidad en los entornos escolares hasta tomar medidas en ciertas cosas mínimas, básicas en la infraestructura, por qué es importante tratar de ayudar a las familias que tienen como único medio de transporte, ayudarlos y así el distinto de las distintas cosas que mencionaste, como también los niños dentro del vehículo, que indudablemente es algo que es totalmente inaceptable que un niño pierda la vida dentro de un vehículo. Ya hay países, yo creo que Fred nos va a contar ahora un poco de esto, pero ya hay países que lograron 0 muertes de niños dentro de los autos, así que, ¿por qué no? Los argentinos podemos fijarnos este objetivo tan ambicioso, tan noble y tan correcto con la vida humana. También quiero agradecer que ha y a todas las provincias, al ingeniero Luis Silva de Externum, que también ha trabajado en lo que es la planificación de todos estos programas. La verdad que la pandemia trajo muchas cosas buenas y no tan buenas. Las buenas es que nos metió el acelerador en trabajar de forma digital con plataformas nuevas. Así que bueno, a todos muchísimas gracias. Ya le voy dando la palabra a nuestro queridísimo amigo, ya a esta altura y colaborador, Fred Weckman, que como latinoamericanos debemos sentirnos orgullosos de contar con la colaboración de alguien tan, ¿cómo decirlo?, tan prestigioso, alguien que ha trabajado en los planes de seguridad vial de los países que han logrado avanzar de forma destacada a nivel mundial, alguien que es un referente, que digamos, él se va a poner vergonzoso que lo voy a decir, pero es uno de los 2 o 3 referentes más importantes a nivel global, y que esté hoy junto con todos nosotros para hablar de conceptos y de cosas que nos van a hacer un clic en nuestra cabeza, sin duda, y que va a generar en nosotros un cambio en los hábitos, en cómo nos movemos o qué decisiones tomamos a la hora de movilizar a los más chiquitos de nuestra población, a los niños. Así que bueno, ya le voy dando la palabra a Fred Weckman. Recuerden todos que pueden elegir la traducción, él nos va a hablar en inglés, pero tenemos traducción en simultáneo. Muchísimas gracias, Fred.
Okay, good morning to you all, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that, and I would like to share a couple of my thoughts with you today on child safety. As a matter of fact, this is an area my country was pretty active on, and I went back to the statistics of my country. And having seen that in a longer period of time, 40, 50 years, we managed to reduce the number of fatalities in this country by 80%. And at the same period, we managed to reduce the number of children killed in road traffic by 95%. Meaning that compared with 40, 50 years ago, we kill in a road crash 20 children these days, and then I'm talking about the age group of 0 to 14. So that is rather minimal, although we aim for a next step. Our life these days are dominated by COVID-19. So our social life, our economic life is really dominated by this, meaning that we have this meeting now this way, I'm not with you, and we have hardly any contact. And I don't know what you are doing, but I'm following the medical news carefully on this topic. I'm interested in that because it determines my life as well. So if you have a look on what's happening in the medical sector, then you can see that there's a lot of research going on, trying to understand what exactly happens with this virus when it's attacking our human body. They research how you transmit the virus from one person to another one. They try to recognize what is a mild and a more serious symptom and how to treat patients. And last but not least, you see a lot of developments when it comes to developing a vaccine, an effective vaccine, a safe vaccine, and the next step hopefully will be to use that vaccine for the whole population. So only in the half years of time, you see a lot of knowledge coming, helping us out of this crisis. And that's based on research, on evidence. So there are a lot of investigations, researchers acting these days. They publish their results in journals like this, and they bring the results from the research to practical applications.
Fred, let me interrupt a little
You have
bit.
to act on this.
Fred, permítame. Ay, se me cayó.
And basically,
Espera,
yes.
Fred, necesitamos un minuto para que las personas puedan cambiar al idioma español tu presentación.
Okay.
Así que miren en el chat a todos los participantes.
Give me a signal to start again.
Sí, vas a tener que empezar de vuelta. Y a todas las personas les pedimos que seleccionen el idioma español para poder escuchar la presentación en español.
Primero interpretación y luego elegir el canal.
Primero aprieten interpretación y después elijan el canal del idioma que quieren escuchar. Lo estamos explicando en el chat. Si tienen dudas, miren en el chat. Vamos a dar... Bueno, ahora sí creo que ya todas las personas, si tienen dudas sobre el idioma, miren el chat, por favor. Ahí tienen la instrucción de cómo seleccionar el idioma. Así que, Fred, te pido el favor que comiences nuevamente. Perdón, temas técnicos.
Okay, so I'll start again. And I start saying that our lives, our social and economic lives here in this part of the world is fully dominated by this COVID pandemic, and that's similarly in your country. And I follow the progress on knowledge development on this closely. I'm not a medical expert, but I'm interested in it and I follow it closely. And there you can see that research is helping us a lot, understanding what's happening with us. So how the virus affects our human body, how transmission from one person to another one occurs, and how you can recognize symptoms, mild symptoms, more serious symptoms, and we learn more and more how to treat sick people, ill people, with several treatments. And last but not least, the development of the vaccine. And here you can see different big pharmaceuticals are working on that. And it seems to be that they are rather positive about that they are able to produce an effective vaccine and also a safe vaccine for us. And the next step will be then to apply that vaccine in our population and immunize our population. Hopefully, we are protected by this vaccine for this virus. A lot of research being done right now all over the world, and they publish their results in journals like I show you here. And based on these results, practitioners take action in helping and supporting us through this pandemic. And I'm impressed by the results in a very short period of time. I would say this is a nice example of what we call evidence-based medicine. And there you see 3 circles with 3 terms in it. And that's exactly what we are talking about in this fight. We are looking for the best evidence we can find. And we would like to bring that evidence to experts, to expertise. They know how to interpret this best evidence and how to use that. But on the other hand, you have also the patient values, what the patient wants. So that's not, it's not a given, but there are differences. And please have a look at this and think about child safety in roads. We have a lot of evidence. We have experts, and people like you are the experts of the future. And of course, you work in your own environment and try to understand what type of interventions can be used for solving the problems we have. And this is not a matter of applying a cookbook slavishly. That's not the case. You have to do it custom made for a specific patient, and in your case, for a specific province or a specific city. But please use the knowledge we have and apply that and assess that to the conditions you meet. And hopefully you are able to implement these activities and assess the performance and then learn from that. So that is the circle in evidence-based medicine. And this is already 150 years old, so that's not new at all. But it's still very opportune to do it like this. Making the step to what we are talking about today, and that is the road safety of children and adolescents. It's my view that we know that children are at risk on their journey to and from school. They expose many of our children to an environment with high speed. We invite them or force them to use overcrowded public transport and unsafe motorcycles. And finally, we don't deliver enough proper protection for them, whether these are the sidewalks in the streets, whether these are the helmets or the child restraints, we don't protect them enough. And if I talk to you now, this is not my first time that I'm dealing with road safety problems in Argentina. I was involved in a study that we published in 2017, and it was a so-called benchmarking study, and that is still available, this study. And the main conclusion from that study was that the problems in Argentina are known. You know what are your problems. And we also identified that the interventions are well known. It's not new for you all. And it looks like that you face problems with implementation. And if you face problems with implementation, then the question is also, as always, where does that come from? Is that a matter of lack of political priority? Is that a matter of lack of resources? Is that simply other priorities, political priorities, whatever. And it's up to you to figure out what kind of problems you have resulting in this poor implementation of well-known interventions. If you talk about safety of children, then it's of interest to see which perspective you choose. And we have a tradition in road safety to work from road safety in itself. I call it in the silo of road safety. But what you see these days more and more, that we as a road safety community try to integrate ourselves with the other so-called sustainable development goals as announced by the United Nations. And this perspective gives more interest and emphasize the relevance of road safety. What are these other goals? These other goals are, for example, the health perspective, in which we try to activate people to have active modes, but also by activities to fight obesity. We are thinking about designing and planning other urban settings, more livable settings, and making the cities less dependent on the need to use an automobile. And finally, the environmental matters. These are very, very relevant indeed. And then we are talking about the emissions, we are talking about pollutions, we are talking about noise. So we expose our citizens in the cities to those three elements more and more. And you see an increasing interest in cities to deal with these different aspects of human life in cities. And I found a publication, and perhaps you know it, but for me it was new. I found a publication, and Nanni's organization was involved in this as well, where you have seen this broader perspective. And I recommend you to have a look at this publication and see whether there's something of interest for you in it. So this is focusing on the situation in Latin America and the Caribbean. So it's very close to you. And it is titled Streets for Life, meaning that it is oriented towards persons, to humans, and not so much towards vehicles. And that perspective, that's up to you, whether you buy that or not. But this is a perspective I found in from the region, and that I think is inspiring. We do know that the design of urban settings and the transportation system in urban settings do have a lot of impact on the health and on the safety of our children and adolescents. I'm not going to present to you a lot of figures. That's not my idea, but you can find them. And here I listed a couple of relevant implications of how our cities are working, cities and villages are working. We do know that road traffic comes with a very serious price for the health of these young people. We do know that these environmental problems have a heavy impact on their lives. We do know that the way we have our streets and roads today are not very attractive for people to walk, to cycle, and to do your exercise. And as a result of that, we create and strengthen the problems related to health of obesity. Furthermore, in the world, we make a problem of proper entrance to education due to the fact that there are injuries involved in lives of children. And we have to be aware that many of our children are affected by, their lives are affected by injuries to parents and to breadwinners of the families. And moreover, we have a problem of equity because everywhere in the world, not necessarily in your country, but everywhere in the world, children who live alongside the most dangerous roads, breathe the dirtiest air, and have the biggest barriers to access to education and employment. So we have a strong problem related with the poorer part of our population. So that is a perspective, the broader perspective than just road safety. And I'm inclined to believe that finding allies with these other important aspects of life will create more opportunities for us as road safety people. And that perspective has been chosen by a group of experts, and I was one of those experts, that drafted a document by the end of last year called Beyond 2020, The Next Steps. And this document inspired the Ministerial Conference on Road Safety in Stockholm in February this year, just prior to the COVID started. And this declaration from Stockholm influenced a lot a resolution adopted by the United Nations by the 1st of September this year. So here you see a nice example of bringing evidence to decision making. Allow me to present the main idea behind this, this document. Here you can see 3 levels of activities to improve road safety. The bottom one is based on strengthening road safety pillars. And I hope that many of you are familiar with these road safety pillars. They are coming from the international community, and they are not unique. And I always say many countries can still make a lot of progress applying these pillars and implement effective measures. On top of that approach, you see more and more that countries embark on what is called the safe system approach. And I'm going to say a few words on that later on. And the new step in this report is to see how we can find allies in other sustainable development goals. And we indicate in the report where we see this cooperation. And hopefully, by finding more of these allies, we increase our possibilities and opportunities to act on road safety. In our report, we have 9 recommendations, as a matter of fact. And one of the recommendations is on children and young people. And we make the statement in our report that our children are our most valuable social asset, and we cannot look into the future without special consideration of their welfare. And of course, that is rather political as a statement, but it's also very human to see it like that. And that's why I fully support the idea of Argentina, together with the foundation, to pay a specific attention to this subject. And to illustrate my point that children are of special value for us, I bring you to this photograph. And I don't know whether you have seen this photograph. A couple of months or 2 months ago, I don't know exactly. There was an earthquake in Turkey. A lot of people were killed. And all these rescue people worked hard to see whether they can find human beings still alive in the rubbish they found there. And after 65 days, they found a little girl. And you see the girl here in the middle. And this is her arm. This is the hand of one of those rescue workers. And this is an amazing picture that illustrates well how valuable our children are. We do a lot to save them. We do a lot to help them, to give them a decent life. And I would like to see that this view on how we value our children is being translated in road safety as well. And there are a lot of options, so we are not with empty hands. We can help the children. We know how to do that. Going back to road safety then here I listed a couple of statements based on my perception of what type of problem we face when we deal with road safety. Our road traffic today is inherently unsafe, meaning that crashes can and will occur everywhere. You cannot say it is safe enough. And the reason is that we didn't design the system with safety in mind. As a matter of fact, we did that when we designed aviation. We do that if we design railroads. Their safety is dominant. You never hear somebody saying, it's busy on the airport, let's reduce the distance between planes. No, safety is dominant. And if there are more planes, then you have to wait longer. That is the dominant way of thinking in that system. And that's not the case in road safety. And we can perhaps learn from these other systems. The problem for us today in road traffic is that we are almost fully dependent on how good the road users perform their tasks. The system is not helping them a lot. They are helping them a little bit, but we are dependent on how good the human beings are doing their task. And comes an important observation: human beings make errors in whatever they do, also in road traffic. And it's not a shame that you have that. It's very human to make your errors. Another very important item is that we allow for energy levels in crashes far more higher than the human body can tolerate. And because of that, we have injuries. In these crashes, the energy levels are too high to have no injuries. And these are a couple of important reasons why we have to look for another approach. And these days we call that approach in the world the safe system approach. I wrote books about this, and I'm not going to tell a lot about that, but basically this approach is a combination of a vision, a set of principles, and a set of tools. These visions and principles are rather similar in all parts of the world. The tools differ in different countries. And that comes to what I talked about, this medical metaphor in the beginning, that I say not every patient is exactly the same. They have different backgrounds, they have different wishes. And that's also the case when it comes to applying the tools fitting in this safe system approach. This safe system approach, you can read a lot about that, and I've here listed two reports coming from the OECD and the International Transport Forum in Paris, 2008 and 2016. And in this report, they write what they think is of relevance for this implementing safe system. And these are principles. And in the report you read that these principles are not negotiable. They are strict. And one of the important, I'm not going to read them all to you, but allow me to include one that is very relevant. Many people, perhaps even in this room, do believe that the major cause of crashes are the human beings making errors and violations. And the response to that approach is then train them better, send more police officers to them, and hopefully as a result of that, they will behave more safe. But this is based on the idea that you have to blame the individual road user. And we are moving from that paradigm, from that perspective, to another paradigm in which we say, of course, the human being has to perform properly, safely, but it's also those who are designing and operating components of the road system, designing roads, designing vehicles, or dealing with the health care after a crash, that do have a responsibility. And that you can read in this report. And I think that is of relevance. So here I have the two reports, Towards Zero, and the other one is called Zero Road Deaths and Serious Injuries. A vision on road safety. And it makes sense to have a thing like that as well, to have a kind of a vision. And here you see several words. Perhaps you are familiar with the Vision Zero, mainly used in Sweden. Towards Zero, as I identified in that ITF report. You can also have the vision that you would like to protect vulnerable road users. They deserve our protection, for example, children. You can also say as a vision, I don't want that others have an impact on my life. So I would like to protect me from awkward actions by others. And you can say, I want to maximize the mobility freedom in limits of safety. So you don't allow everything anymore, but you have some sort of limitation on that. This safe system approach, how to make that visible. And I give that a try with an approach I borrowed from a UK researcher, James Reason. And when we thought about a safe system, we said his approach is applicable to us as well. And James Reason starts with slices of Swiss cheese. And in these slices you see holes. And these holes are defects. In the first slice you have the system design. The second slice you have quality control. The third one is the psychological precursors for unsafe actions. Here you have human behavior in general, and here you have the human behavior just prior to a crash. And you can see that in all these slices there are holes, and we call them, based on reason, errors. And these are latent errors. On top of that, you have unsafe actions by road users. These are these holes. These are red arrows. So these latent errors are not necessarily resulting in crashes, but a combination of these holes will result in a crash. And that's the reason why you can put this trajectory through all these holes, and then you have a crash. Okay, what is safe system? Safe system tries to reduce latent errors in the systems. Latent errors in the roads, in the vehicle design, in behavior, in legislation, whatever. And that leads to the following idea, and don't blink with your eyes now, because this is the next one. And here you can see we eliminated holes over here. We still have unsafe actions, but this trajectory cannot come to this. So what we try to do in road traffic is to create conditions in which we try to eliminate or minimize the defects of our system, potentially resulting in crashes. So this is the idea behind safe system. And I say to all my students, perhaps you forget me in your lifetime, but never forget this Swiss cheese model as an approach of how to deal with improving road safety. The human being is the measure of all things. And you recognize that Leonardo da Vinci did that already. And here, based on these two important ideas, we have to redesign our road transport system. Our system should be designed in such a way that we can expect and adapt, accommodate human error, because it is inevitable that human beings are making mistakes, and sometimes these mistakes result in crashes. And the second element I talked about was the impact in crashes by forces and by accelerations that will injure the human body. And we try to do it in such a way that this is not possible anymore. So this sounds perhaps very academic and very general, but we were able to translate this in concrete design of our roads and streets, of changing our vehicles, and let's say the critical element might be to impact travel speeds and impact speeds. And that is certainly an issue. It's of interest to know that in my country, in cities, We have a strong history in traffic calming, in reducing travel speeds in residential areas. And interesting to note that a week ago in Dutch Parliament, a law was accepted that the speed in urban settings will change from 50 kilometers per hour to 30 kilometers per hour, unless you can prove that the higher speed is safe. Think about that. Think about that. Think about a system where you say 30 kilometers per hour is the default value. And of course, you can drive faster, but then you have to prove that faster is safe. And that's accepted by Dutch Parliament. And now there's a big task for municipalities to deal with that. So speed and speed management, as Nani said before, is a key issue when it comes to road safety. Here I have listed what is the impact of, if the human being is the measure of all things, what does it mean for children? First of all, you have to think about the question, when can you allow children to travel unaccompanied by whatever parents in traffic? Do we have knowledge about that? Yes, we have. We have knowledge about that we can say from a certain age, you can travel on your own, and below a certain age, it's not wise because the brain development is not good enough to act personally and privately in road traffic. And similar thing when it comes to what people can do and can't do, because they don't know, they have a tendency to experiment, and they have a tendency to impress. And because of that, and we know that in the development of children pretty well, which age they can do certain activities in road traffic. And based on that, we can design our system. And here you can see a parent, a mother, accompany a child because she believes it's not safe to leave the child on her own. But on the other hand, you see this other boy, and perhaps he's 9, 10 years old, and the parents decided, okay, he can go on his own. And now you see what he's doing. He's paying more attention to using his mobile than paying attention to cycling. So that is a risk we run, and we have to educate these type of boys necessarily to do the safe things. And here I summarized a little bit of the knowledge we have on the different elements of relevance to learn when you can do certain activities on your own. And this is coming from fundamental psychological research, and they apply that to road traffic. And here you can see that you have to be very careful in allowing young children to participate in traffic on their own. And the reason for that is that they are not able and capable of carrying out their task required. And of course, what we can do with changing the system is to make these tasks easier. It's easier to negotiate with lower speeds than with high speeds. And it's perfectly known that the children learn what is the borderline of a sidewalk, and that they are not allowed to leave the sidewalk without watching. You can learn that, and you can learn it from a certain age. It is useless to try to learn a child of 2 years old how to cross the street, because she's not capable, or he's not capable of doing that. So there is a lot of knowledge in the world, understanding the limitations of children, and where you can start educating them to do carry out certain tasks themselves. Allow me then to go to a couple of functions where we bring children as passenger in a motorized vehicle, as passenger on a motorcycle, as pedestrian, as a cyclist. To make a bold statement for you, I'm not in favor to transport children on a motorcycle. I do believe that we should try to change that in the world. I've seen this in many countries in the world, and I understand where that is coming from. I understand that we have to take a broader picture than just trying to prevent that, because these people are pretty much dependent on that, and there's not a real alternative. But I strongly believe that it's not the right direction to offer more protection to these children by giving them a helmet. We have to look for other opportunities to take care about how to transport children. And similarly, when you see these pedestrians walking, I have no idea why they are walking. I have no idea why they're walking on the carriageway, but I observe that they are doing. Perhaps there's no sidewalk. Perhaps the sidewalk is occupied by other activities. But this is not the right direction to solve our problems. I do believe there are very simple principles to deal with. We have to protect our children against exposure to risk. Simply try to protect them. And we talked about when is a reasonable age to allow them for their own activities on their own without any accompany. The second element I would like to see is to see how to make public transport safe and attractive to be used. Perhaps less expensive. That's another item I always hear. And I would like to see options to prevent transporting children by motorcycles. And the last line of thinking is to engineer ourselves out of the problem. We talk here about child restraints, we talk about speed reduction, and we talk about giving physical space to pedestrians and cyclists. These are the three lines we can apply. Safe speeds. That is the first idea of a safe road environment. And of course, I know that reducing speed limits and reducing travel speeds cannot be overnight in whatever society. You need a lot of discussion with your citizens, with your communities about that. And I'm not suggesting to give every street in the city 30 kilometers per hour, but we do know that if the impact speed is higher than 30 kilometers per hour, then we have serious problems, and it's not easy to survive that. The other element is separation of different transport modes, giving sidewalks everywhere, not just sidewalks where you have crashes, everywhere. Everywhere in cities and villages, you need these sidewalks, and sometimes you can make separate space for cyclists as well. When it comes to safe vehicles, there's more and more attention by car manufacturers to have safer car fronts. We have the problem of the blind spot of trucks and buses. So then you have turning buses and overriding pedestrians and cyclists simply because they cannot see them. And then I arrive at the critical point of the child restraint systems. Just by coincidence, I learned a story yesterday by somebody from Argentina presenting to me research from Argentina on the reasons why parents are not using child restraints in their cars. And you can easily find that because it's work being done by the Road Safety Agency a couple of years ago. And you can read it. And I certainly recommend you to work on this item. And this is an area where I could say that 100% wearing rates is not impossible. In many countries in my part of the world, you see that almost 100%. And it's not so easy to understand why it's so problematic in your part of the world. And I talked about this in this study we did in 2017. And we observed
solucionar el tema de la
the use of
traducción.
these child restraint systems up to 50% only. And you can ask yourself why we have only 50% and why, which kind of barriers do we have to bring that to 100%?
Les vamos informando por el chat. Ahora le vamos a pedir a Fred que vaya un slide más atrás.
Okay. I arrive at my final sheet. I believe strongly in evidence-based approach. I started with the COVID-19 and how the medical sector respond to that. And I do believe that is the way we can make progress. Second idea I have these days is that we don't use road safety as a silo, but try to integrate with other sustainable development goals. The safe system approach is the way forward in road safety. That's how I see it, based on all the knowledge I have. And I would say you cannot take a solution from the shelf. You in Argentina have to work yourself on that. What is the Argentinian version of that safe system approach? What does it mean for us? Of course, you can be inspired by examples from elsewhere, but you have to prepare for yourself. And this comes back to the values of the patients I talked about in the beginning. Then I come to my conclusion that if you apply the knowledge we have at a certain scale, that I can guarantee you success. So it's not a lack of knowledge that we have. The concepts we know, of course you have to develop your own tools, but I can guarantee you that this will have success. If you talk about implementation, I developed my own law, and that is the law of many small steps, bringing a brighter future nearer. It's not one silver bullet you have to apply. It is step by step improving the system. And you can work in different directions, but all the same aim. And that's why I'm pretty positive about the future of road safety. And as a researcher, I always say, please evaluate and look back on your steps and try to learn yourself from that. That's always smart. And again, have a look at how the medical sector is doing that. And you possibly will agree with me. Okay, that's my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Bueno, ya... Sí, bueno, ya terminamos. No sé si vamos a pasar algunas preguntas. Lo pregunto en inglés, ¿no? Ok. Okay, Fred, can you listen to me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I'll go with some of the questions in English.
Yeah.
So I keep in the same channel as you. How do you think, one of the questions from the audience is, how do you think we can integrate this road safety recommendations in our public policy, especially in a country that it's a federal country?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's not the first time that I'm confronted with the fact that you live in a federal country. And in this federal country, there's a lot of power with the provinces, is my understanding. And once I met one of your ministers saying, well, this is the critical issue, how the different levels of government can cooperate together in this. Allow me to say this is a game. It's a game between two partners that need each other. And they have to play their role. And of course, in limitations given by your laws and regulations and by your constitution. I understand that. But I would say, please make a deal between the national level and the provincial level. But it also means that at the provincial level, you need a lot of expertise to be a road safety expert to work on this effectively. Then you have the cooperation between the provincial level and the local level. And as you have seen, certainly when it comes to redesigning our cities and villages, then you are fully dependent on what cities can deliver. And I see a very, very important task for cities of implementing this and redesigning their cities and having this different approach compared with the traditional approach. So in a federal state, it seems to me more complicated to make progress than in a national state such as France, where everything is coming from Paris, and in the arrondissement, they simply have to carry out what the people in Paris think about. And that's not your situation. So that means that in your 24 provinces, that you are key stakeholders. And I would say that perhaps the provinces is the turning point in Argentina when it comes to improving safety. And I do hope that at the federal level, they give a lot of support to the provinces and to the municipalities to make these steps.
Oh yes, we have a nice challenge with the national agency, and I think perhaps a role as an NGO, like kind of an outsider, like we are independent, maybe that it's helping the, as you said, the agreements, the dialogue between the national level and the provinces. Second question from the audience. This is interesting. One of the comments, it's about why the progress in road safety, the recommendations, and everything that we know we have to do, it looks like goes like in a elevator, so goes very fast. But then the actions goes very slow, like we have climbing like in stairs, you know, like step by step. It looks like, you know, the difference of the progress on the recommendations go much faster than the implementation. How do you think we can make it faster, or, you know, to implement all the recommendations?
I have a long history in road safety. And I always say, I never experienced in my lifetime that road safety was seen as a top priority. It was never a top priority. There were always different priorities. So nowadays, for example, when it comes to traffic, the environmental problems related to traffic and transportation has a higher political priority. The Paris Agreement is more important than road safety. Nevertheless, I said it before, in 40, 50 years, we have only 20% left of the number of fatalities and injuries. And that is a matter of step by step. And what is a step? A step is a used opportunity. There are opportunities and you have to look for opportunities. So all these experts here I've seen on my screen, you'll have to find your own opportunities and to create your own opportunities and see whether you can use these opportunities to make a step. Don't expect that you need to develop what they call the silver bullet, so that you have one solution and then that the beast will be killed. That's not the case. It is step by step. And I give you an example of my personal life. It's not very scientific, but nevertheless, perhaps it's helpful. When I started my career, I started as a traffic engineer in Amsterdam. And as a traffic engineer, one of my first tasks was to make school environment safer. So what we did, as a matter of fact, we asked the town council for a budget for doing that. We analyzed the situation, and the first year we improved the school environment of 140 schools. The second year, 650 schools. So these are steps. And what we did, we were invited to deal with the school environment. We asked for budget, of course not enough. Then we proved our success. We came back to the town council and we said, okay, here we have our success. And then they allowed us to make another 650 safer. That is the way I do believe that we can make progress in road safety. Of course, sometimes you need a big step and you can use that. So for example, in the energy crisis in the 70s, it's a while ago, but nevertheless, it was big opportunities. And now perhaps at the end of the COVID pandemic, I expect again big opportunities, because I expect that our society will change as a result of that in many aspects. But small steps, but many small steps will produce a big change.
Thanks, Fred. Then one of the comments that most of the people made is, okay, we see how to approach the child road safety in terms from the infrastructure, public policies, regulations, law, things like that. But many people is wondering how to work from the child, from inside the schools, or how to talk, you know, to work the cultural change in children from them. It's something that, you know, do you have an experience on programs, in educational programs? What you can say about that?
Yeah, I'm a strong believer of combining education activities with changing the physical environment of children. So try to combine the two. First of all, I do believe that you can tell children and educate children and train children what to do and what not to do. And you have to keep in mind what age is relevant for what type of education. But this combination of physical environment and education. I talked about 80% of our street lengths in urban settings is 30 kilometers per hour. That started as a project around school zones. So we started to make the school environment safer, that we have playing space, safe playing space for children near the school, that we have lower travel speeds near the schools, that we organize, if parents transport their children to the school, that we have space for that. So you have to redesign the school environment. And that is based on input from the schools and from the parents. We invited children to explain what are their problems when they participate in traffic, and use that when redesigning. They indicated where they cross. They indicated where there always a big truck preventing them of seeing traffic coming on. So they indicated what kind of problem they have. And based on that insight, we try to educate them, and we try to change the physical environment of schools. And as a matter of fact, from schools to the broader residential areas, that was one step. And from one residential area to 10 or to 100 residential areas was the next step. So there you can see it's step by step, and then try to increase the impact. And of course you have to be a little bit smart of understanding of how you can do that. But most of the time my experience is that people like you are smart enough to make these steps. And well, that at least is the approach I took in my career, and was a rather successful approach, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Fred. Now, can I switch to Spanish?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay. Bueno, ahora ya dando cierre, vamos a presentar un premio del que vamos a estar participando, una premiación, un concurso que vamos a estar participando con las provincias, y después le voy a pedir a Sebastián, ya te voy adelantando, que te prepares, así nos das unas palabritas de cierre que estés por ahí. Así que bueno, vamos a ver unas imágenes del premio. Este premio tendrá sus nominados en mayo del 2021, o sea, ahora nomás, empezado el año, y van a participar la categoría de los gobiernos provinciales, participan de todas las provincias que participen de este proyecto. Todos los que estén trabajando en la seguridad vial infantil van a poder ser parte de este concurso. Indudablemente acá lo que estamos proponiendo es un trabajo que busca proteger la vida y la salud de los niños y niñas en Argentina, en cada una de las provincias, más allá de sus particularidades. Todos pueden avanzar e ir integrando
A ver, Nani, habla a ver si se te escucha. Bueno, si les parece, vamos a ir cerrando la jornada. Cualquier cosa, Nani, después si vuelve tu audio, cerrás vos. Yo, bueno, parte de la Agencia Nacional, de Pablo Cariñano, que está en otra actividad, agradecerles a todos. Vi que algunos sacaban fotos de los slides, decirles que la presentación está a disposición, así que después la solicitan y se la pasamos. Fue muy interesante la exposición de Fred, corroboró algunas cuestiones en las cuales venimos trabajando y que está planteada en el desarrollo que hicieron las provincias, la cuestión de la vulnerabilidad de los chicos en la moto y lo que dice, bueno, la ley nacional, lo que adhieren las provincias, las velocidades máximas a 30 en zonas calmas. Ya hay algunas ciudades que la empezaron a implementar, como Santa Fe Capital y varias otras, y un montón de cuestiones que están y que son parte del programa de cada una de las provincias para el año que viene, con lo cual eso nos reconforta. También nos da un golpe de realidad, sobre todo cuando dijo que desde siempre vio y convivió con que la seguridad vial no es prioridad. Eso para los que hacemos seguridad vial es frustrante, es real, pero bueno, también estamos acá con ese desafío, con el desafío de mejorar y de armar propuestas contundentes, que sirvan, que sean eficaces, que tengan respaldo, que tengan sustentabilidad para después ir a golpear puertas y insistir hasta que esto se materialice. Vamos a ir a pedirle a los intendentes que aborden la seguridad vial infantil, que den lugar al trabajo de la seguridad vial infantil y de la movilidad segura de los niños. Vamos a trabajar y tenemos que trabajar en entornos escolares seguros, tenemos que cuidar a los niños y eso lo vamos a hacer entre todos, con la Agencia Nacional a la cabeza, yendo a golpear la puerta de las intendencias para que se pongan a trabajar con nosotros. Así que bueno, agradecerles, creo que estamos cerrando un año importante, donde no se ha avanzado mucho en un montón de cuestiones por, bueno, cuestiones que todos sabemos, pero me parece que hemos hecho una gran propuesta en seguridad vial infantil y es un compromiso para el año que viene. Agradecerles a todos y también convocarlos, si bien estamos trabajando con 35 personas de los 24 referentes provinciales, con la Fundación Gonzalo Rodríguez y con otros especialistas, todos aquellos que puedan sumar están invitados a colaborar, personas que trabajan hace tiempo en centros de admisión de licencias, de otras direcciones de la Agencia Nacional obviamente, ONGs, especialistas, técnicos, educadores, necesitamos el apoyo. Hoy fuimos 250 interesados en seguridad vial infantil, necesitamos que sean miles y miles. Este año nacional pudimos avanzar en educación vial, en capacitación docente por puntaje. Creemos que el docente se tiene que formar y abordar la temática en la escuela, y para eso necesitamos darle puntaje para que le asignen tiempo, a través del INFOD, del Instituto de Formación Docente, y de actividades virtuales directamente con los ministerios provinciales. Hemos llegado a 2.500 docentes y vamos a ir por más. Pero el canal del abordaje municipal y provincial a través de este programa federal necesitamos profundizarlo con todos el año que viene. Así que bueno, agradecerles el tiempo, quedar a disposición, les vamos a pasar los slides y bueno, cada uno desde su lugar seguir trabajando en esto. Muchas gracias. Nani, me parece que yo te voy a tener que despedir. ¿Sí? Bueno, agradecerle a la Fundación, a Mati y a Nani por el compromiso. Así que bueno, muchas gracias. Nos vemos. Y a Fred, perdón, gracias.